Very nice, girl.
How great was that? Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Real Fellas Talk Sports. My favorite time of the week, 8 o'clock on Wednesday. I call it happy hour. I happen to have an opportunity to share that with my friends. And let me take a second to introduce the fellas. Well, Earl, Go Rush, that was a wonderful intro this evening. Good job. Earl and I go way back. I just want to say hello to Mr. Earl, Go Rush.
Good evening, Charles. Good talking to you. I'm excited about doing the show with you, David and Larry tonight.
As always, my friend. All the way from Indianapolis, Indiana. Yes, ties to the Washington, D.C. area, too. He knows his sports as well. He's pretty daggone good. He's even representing the Pacers this evening. Mr. David Burnett. Good evening, David.
Good evening, Chuck. Hey, good to see you. By the way, I'm wearing my Pacers blue. The Indiana Pacers are looking good. And Tyrese Halliburton, by the way, Chuck, is leading the league in assists. And he's scoring 24 points a game. And he's right now, if given the opportunity, would be first team all NBA. I just wanted to say that.
Yes, I deserved that, David. I deserved it. And last, and believe me, not least, Mr. Larry Abels. He and I, too, go way, way back. Mr. Abels, good evening. How are you, sir?
Hey, Chuck, good evening to you. I'm ecstatic to be here, ready to get started.
All right. Well, let's now we've got that out the way, let's get into it. We're going to try to cover a lot tonight. There's a lot going on in sports. We're going to chop up the last week. And we're going to start with the National Football League. And the way I want to do this evening, there are 4 games I want to touch on. And, of course, if we want to branch out from that, we can Ravens and the Browns. Last week I had suggested that I thought the Ravens had finally turned the corner. I also thought they may be the best team in football, I thought. And then they lose to the Browns in the way the Ravens do. So my first question, I'm going to start with you, Go. What happened between the Ravens and the Browns? How did the Browns pull that off?
First of all, I don't know whether you misspoke or you meant to say it. You said, and the Ravens lose the way the Ravens do. I'm not quite sure what you meant by that one.
Well, they've lost 3 games this year, I think, and all 3 times looks like they were going to win the game, and then they lost the game.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. To answer your question, I thought it was a great game, and both have great defenses. I didn't think that the Browns would be able to keep up with the Ravens offensively, but then again, I didn't know that the Browns defense was that good as well. So I thought it was a great game. You know, their teams are pretty much even, but Watson's out now, so we don't have to worry about Cleveland anymore.
Larry, he had a great, he mentioned Watson. He had a great second half in that game. I think he might have been 14 for 14. You have any thoughts of that game, Larry, in terms of what happened and what's going on with the Ravens and why they can't close these games out?
Well, you know, I expected a defensive struggle in this game. Both teams, the top 2 defenses. And while both defenses actually did score, both offenses pretty much had their way. Watson had the best game that he had in Cleveland. It's the good news. But as Earl mentioned, now he seems like he's out for the season with a shoulder injury. Baltimore led for like all but 40 seconds of the game. And so they're losing the way that you described earlier. I still think Baltimore's one of the better teams, though.
I do too. So David, is that the tough? By the way, I'd like to get your thoughts on that game. But is that the toughest conference in the National Football League?
You mean
Cincinnati and Cleveland and Pittsburgh?
Probably so. They're pretty good from top to bottom, but can be disappointing at times. Every team in that division can say so, but every team in that division could possibly make the playoffs. Now, let me just say this. Whenever Baltimore plays Cleveland, I just kind of chuckle because the Baltimore Ravens are the original Cleveland Browns. They're the real Cleveland Browns. They moved. And the Cleveland Browns that are currently named the Cleveland Browns are the replacement Cleveland Browns. I just want everybody to understand that. So there is some rivalry there. There's always going to be kind of rivalry because of that. That said, that division is, you just don't know. Mike Tomlin, he just keeps winning, and I don't know how. They got an average to mediocre quarterback who hasn't proven anything, but they find ways to win. I'm going to pick Pittsburgh to win that division in the end at this point. Of course, I'm taking a chance and making that prediction, but Mike Tomlin never loses a season, so I'm going to pick them. But Baltimore always seems to fold up in the end. They did it all the last season, and they're doing it again this season.
Wow. It's disappointing. I think it was Art Modell who moved that team in the middle of the night, wasn't it, back in the day?
Well, it wasn't really in the middle of the night. I mean, Cleveland did not respond to build a stadium. That ends up happening. They had to come up and build a stadium eventually, and they did, and got a new Cleveland Browns team. So, cities have to ante up, even if you think they shouldn't.
Yeah, Baltimore.
Hey, Dave, I think it was the middle of the night. It doesn't have anything to do
it was the middle of the night when the
Baltimore's team moved
when
from
the Baltimore Colts
moved
to Indianapolis in the middle of the night.
Oh, that's right. You're right. Sorry about that. You're right. Good point. All right. Any other comments about the game between the Browns and the Ravens? Because I'll move on to the Texan and Cincinnati game. Anybody have anything additional they would like to add before I move on?
No.
All right. Let's talk about those Texans and the Cincinnati Bengals. Another great game, a game of which I thought the Texans were not going to be able to go into Cincinnati and win that game. But again, another wonderful game. So I'll start with you again. I'll start with you this time, Larry. What were your thoughts on that game? And were you surprised that the Texans pulled that out?
Well, I was certainly surprised at the outcome because I expected Cincinnati to win, but I got to give C.J. Stroud credit again. He had another good game. Finally threw an interception, but still was able to come back and pull it off. And their coach is doing a great job as well. That team seems to really have turned around.
Right. So what is it, David? Did Burrows lose that game or did Stroud win that game?
By the way, it's Burrow.
Okay, sorry about that.
No problem. Stroud, I'm the one that's got to eat a little crow on Stroud because I just haven't been a big fan of his, and I was commenting based on preseason and the early part of the season because I'm a Richardson guy. But Stroud has been impressive. He's now legitimately, because it's a quarterback award, he's legitimately in the MVP race. He really is. Whether he will actually get MVP votes, I think voters are going to be reluctant to give it to a rookie sight unseen. But he's played very well. He gets the ball out quickly. He throws with anticipation. He doesn't throw when the guy is open. He throws them open, and that's impressive. I've got to give him credit for that. I didn't think he could do that at the pro level, as most Ohio State quarterbacks do struggle.
Go. So a receiver for Cincinnati dropped a touchdown in the end zone. I don't know if that was the difference in that game, but do you have any thoughts about that particular game between Cincinnati and the Texans?
Nope, it was just another great game. Things happen. People drop balls. I believe if he had scored, Cincinnati would have won, but you can't say it. It's just still enough time for Stroud to bring them back, so you can't say that happened. Now you say Stroud's playing very well. I just thought it was a great game. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think both of those first two games that we just talked about were really good football games. And the question now we have is, how far can the Texans go? Can the Texans make the playoffs? Larry.
Well, I think they have a shot at it. I'm not quite sure they're there because of that. The strength in the AFC North, I think is like David mentioned, all of those teams might be. I expect at least two of those teams to go. I think they have a chance, but I'm not 100% sure they'll make it.
Right. How about you, David? Do you have any thoughts? Do you think Texans have a shot at making the playoffs? I think they had the worst record in football last year, right?
They have been bad for several years in a row. But what I think karma is working in their favor now. They're the only team in NFL history to hire 3 consecutive African American coaches. Now, that ain't saying much in terms of how good the team was, but I think karma is working in their favor. Now they're in the same division with my Indianapolis Colts. The Colts are 5-5. Houston's 5-5. Jacksonville is showing that they're coming back down to earth and are not quite as good as the prognosticators try to convince us that they are. So that's going to be a tough division as well. So I don't know. Texans are pretty good, and DeMeco Ryans, the new head coach, he's bringing some new energy into the Texans that the Texans have needed for the last several years, and I applaud him for that. However, they turn out in that division.
Hey, Earl, if the season ended today, would DeMeco Ryan be your choice of the NFL Coach of the Year? In terms of the job he's done.
Yeah. Possibly, yes. I could go with that. Yeah. Just wanted to give a quick shout out to Lauren Lassiter and CJ Kung Fu for joining in the show.
Well, good evening, and thanks again, guys, for joining us. We super appreciate the support. So, Larry, do you think, if not Marco Ryan, Larry, who would you think would be, maybe if the season ended today, the Coach of the Year in the National Football League?
Well, I think in my closing comment last week, I said Mike Tomlin. So between him and DeMeco Ryans, they got to be the front runners. And I think Houston has a better quarterback. Pittsburgh has won more games with a weaker quarterback. So I'm still going with Tomlin. I don't know how he does it.
I don't know how he does it either.
Well, let me tell you how he does it. He does it because he's a leader. And, just let me just make this point about coaching. We hear all this stuff about offensive-minded head coaches versus defensive. A head coach should be a head coach. They should coach the entire team, inspire the team, offer leadership and guidance to the assistant coaches that they're coaching. That's what makes a true head coach. And I agree with Larry. Mike Tomlin is finally getting the respect that he's due. He's been overdue in terms of praise. I think if you were to stop the season now and give a Coach of the Year award, it has to be Mike Tomlin. The man has never had a losing season. He always seems to find ways to win. He's got a quarterback that's questionable. Kenny Pickett, he's mediocre at best, and that's praise to say he's mediocre. But they find a way to win. So I'm giving it to Mike Tomlin.
And I want to follow up on my comment. I know how he does it. What he does is he gets the most out of the talent he has. And
absolutely.
And that's really what a good coach is. When I say I don't know how he does it, I think I say that because I don't think he has an abundance of talent, but he gets the most out of his players there.
Yes, he does.
That's why I'll give him that award.
Leadership. That matters.
It's going to be interesting to follow that because I think they've been very fortunate in a couple of those games. And I wonder how long that can last over a 17-game season with an average or below average quarterback, with below average receivers. Their defense is really not as strong as it's been in the past. It's going to be interesting to see how that whole thing plays the season out, in my opinion. But we'll see.
Well, all right. Question on that point in Pittsburgh. One thing we cannot overlook, they have one of the top 5 defensive players in the NFL for the last 5-6 years.
TJ?
Yes, he's a great player. That makes a difference, and he can help inspire other defensive players to play out of their minds as well.
All right, well, so we've covered that then. I want to go to the third game. The third game is the 49ers versus the Jaguars. Now, the Jaguars were on the come up. They were playing really, really well. This game was in Jacksonville. The 49ers had lost, I think, 3 in a row. They had a bye week. They did pick up Chase. Young in that bye week. And they put the spank down on Jacksonville this past week. Earl, were you surprised at that outcome? And do you think that the 49ers are back on track?
I was very surprised by the outcome. I definitely thought Jacksonville would win. I thought San Francisco's on the ropes. Yeah, I'm surprised. I think San Francisco may pull it back together, but I still think I don't think Purdy's. I don't think San Francisco's going all the way. I can tell you that much. That's all I can say right now.
Yeah, they're amazing.
I'm looking at them different now after I've seen their 3-game losing streak. I'm looking at them different. That's all. Now they did have some injuries. They came back with one of the best offensive tackles in the league, and
Debo
with that bully. So that does make a difference.
Yes.
But to answer your question, yes, I was very surprised at that outcome. Very surprised.
All right. Larry, what'd you think of that game? I know you've been a little bit skeptical of the 49ers of late. And were you surprised how well they played? And you feel like they're back on the right track?
Well, I looked at that game in a lot of ways. I thought, just like Earl mentioned, getting those players back and adding Chase Young only helped them out a lot. They're very good when they get the lead, and they got the lead. As far as Jacksonville, this was a real test, one of the tests to show, are you ready for prime time? And now, at least for last week, they're not ready yet. I had predicted San Francisco would win that game, so I figured. And Earl and I kind of went against each other on Sunday on that, so I'm not totally surprised.
David, your guy Brock Purdy really did play extremely well. I think he had 148 PPR rating or something. Do you think the 49ers are back on track now that the pieces are back in place? Debo was back, like Earl said. Trent Williams was back to tackle, and they have picked up Chase Young. And it seems like Bosa is starting to round into shape. So do you think?
Well, if they have all their pieces, they can be a very dangerous team. Brock Purdy, who you guys are not still sold on, he doesn't need to be super great. I think of course, I'm the one person on this panel who really likes him. I like the fact that he stays calm. Yeah, he had a couple of rough games, but he didn't have all of his pieces. Christian McCaffrey is arguably the most valuable player on that team. And when you don't have Christian McCaffrey, who has a history of injury problems, even when he was with Carolina, if you don't have him on the field, McCaffrey, he can catch, he can run, he has shake. He's a dangerous player. You have so many other pieces that were back healthy and playing well. San Francisco is a team to be reckoned with when they have all their pieces.
Yeah, I agree. So, with that said, after that game, how would you rank now the NFC? How about ranking the 5 teams right now? Now that I think the 49ers are back on track, go, give me your top 5 from 1 through 5 in the National Football League.
1 through 5. Jeez, it's kind of tough. I would say Philadelphia.
Yeah.
I'd say Kansas City.
Yeah.
I'd say even though they have Rocky, they're still a good team. I just don't know what's going on. I put the Ravens in there. I put the Dolphins in there. I need one more.
Not ready to put the 4.
I can only give you 4. I can only give you those 4.
Okay. How about you, Larry? Did you have?
Yeah. Number 1 and 2 are real easy. That's for me this week. That would be Philadelphia and Kansas City. Got a whole bunch down the rest, but I would probably have Baltimore, San Francisco, and maybe Dallas. And there's a couple of other teams I could have put in there, but I don't know what that is.
It's a tough one to put that 5th one in there. How about you, Mr. Burnett? Do you have a top 5?
I agree basically with what Larry has done. clearly, the Philadelphia Eagles, until proven otherwise, are the number one team in the NFL right now. Kansas City, because they're defending champion, have the best quarterback in football, have to be number two. After that, it gets dicey in terms of who's actually really good. I don't know. San Francisco, when healthy, would be arguably right there with Philadelphia and Kansas City as a great team. I don't know that yet. We'll see. Baltimore, they have shown spark and shown that they could be the number one team or arguing for number one team. This is a year that it could be some team that we're not thinking about, because wouldn't it be something? I know this is going to come out of nowhere. Wouldn't it be something that the team that has now won, I think, 5 straight games, the Minnesota Vikings, we haven't even mentioned them, the Minnesota Vikings, who have taken a guy off the scrap heap and turned him into a star. And they didn't just do it. Josh Dobbs was pretty good as backup in Arizona. So I think if there was a surprise team, a surprise fifth team, and maybe a team that should be reckoned with down the line, it might just be the Minnesota Vikings. They seem like they have something going, and they won a string of games. I don't think we can overlook them at this point.
Well, there's a fourth game I wanted to talk about tonight. That fourth game may include that team that could slip into that fifth spot, and that's the Detroit Lions versus the LA Chargers, which again was a pretty decent game, and maybe the Lions could be that fifth team. I think their record is what, 6-2 or 7-2?
They've only lost 2 games.
Right. And so Earl,
Yes.
any thoughts about the the Los Angeles Chargers Detroit Lions game? And could the Lions be that fifth top team potentially?
There was no surprise. I picked Detroit
Lions
to beat the Chargers. The Chargers don't have a coach. Their coach is a complete idiot. He's an idiot. And so you can't win if the head man doesn't have that much working with him. And as far as them being number 5, top 5, the Lions are all right. They're all right. I mean, I just can't go. I just can't get that full commitment from me.
The thing about the Lions, I'll make a one quick point. Dan Campbell kind of reflects how the Lions have built this thing with offense and defensive line play. Like, he's all about that offense and defensive line play. They run the ball. I mean, the Detroit Lions literally run the ball every week, and they do it pretty effectively. Larry, what did you think of the San Diego Lions game? And could the Lions be that fifth team in the Power 5?
You got ask me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, I was looking at the Lions. It's a whole bunch of teams, and the Lions were certainly one of the ones I was considering. As far as Sunday's game, I thought it was great. You know, we had about 5 or 6 games that ended on the last play of the game, and this one was no different. I thought it was a great game. Both teams went back and forth, and it showed that, you know, Detroit has some fortitude there. So, absolutely, they could be one of those teams. I expect them to make the playoffs.
Right. Wow. Yeah, I agree. So, David, I know you mentioned Minnesota, and I know how you kind of feel about Detroit because they have a history of being very unsuccessful. Do you think perhaps this could be the year that the Lions get into the playoffs?
They should get into the playoffs. They are an up-and-coming team. Now, the question is, will their history haunt them? That's the only question with Detroit. Right. They're not a team that we talk about. They have no national following, none, except on Turkey Day. So next Thursday, we'll see the Detroit Lions, and we'll see if they have recovered from whatever happens to them this Sunday. You know what? They could be. They always seem, even when they're horrible, even when they're horrible, they find a way to win on Thanksgiving. I don't know if they'll win Sunday, but on Thanksgiving, they always win. They used to be the go-to game right around 12, 1 o'clock when you start to eat turkey, get that first helping of food, get some, you know, by the way, I make some hellified greens. And
Ship it to the fellas. Look,
Collard greens, by the way.
before we wrap up the National Football League, there are two games that are coming up this week, and I want to do a rapid fire around the panel and see who you think will win this game. So next week, on Monday night, Philly plays at Kansas City. That's a big game. Go. Who wins the Philly at Kansas City game next Monday night?
You know, I love Mahomes, but I had to go with Philly. Philly's just a tough. I'm going with Philly. I go with Philadelphia. Mahomes, I love him. He been struggling just a little bit recently.
Right.
It don't take long to answer that question. I pick Philadelphia.
Yeah. Larry, Philly at Kansas City.
Philadelphia.
You said it without a question, huh?
That's right. Rapid fire.
David, Philly at Kansas City.
Kansas City. Until I like Philly as the best team in the league, but sometimes you got to be tested. When they faced Kansas City in the Super Bowl, they found a way to lose. They should have won the Super Bowl. I think the pressure is on the Eagles to perform. Kansas City has nothing to prove. They're missing certain players. They're not as strong as they used to be, but they're Kansas City. They are the de facto number one team. They have inarguably the number one quarterback. So it's up to Philly to knock the big boys off the block. And that I think it's going to be psychological for them to have to do that. I just think when all is said and done, Kansas City, even with all their flaws now, even with Mahomes not being 100% Patrick Mahomes, I think Kansas City wins the game, even though they're not technically the best team in the NFL.
It'll be a good game. Tomorrow night, and we can leave after the National Football League after this question. Tomorrow night, the Cincinnati plays Baltimore. And again, real quick, and I'll start with you, David, and go the other way. Who wins that game? Baltimore and Cincinnati tomorrow night.
Where's it? Who's playing? I mean, what city?
The game is in Cincinnati.
You know what's going to happen? John Harbaugh, who I truly respect, special teams expert, very good with the coaching and motivating. Sorry, Cincinnati is going to find a way to win that game. Baltimore, for whatever reason, as good a coach as they have in John Harbaugh, they find ways to lose. And I'm going to pick Cincinnati. And I'm not even a big Cincinnati fan, but I think Cincinnati wins that game.
Cincinnati and Kansas City, both their defenses are better this year than they have been in the past. And both of those defenses don't get enough credit. Larry, who wins?
Well, just so that y'all know, I think the game's in Baltimore.
Game, Baltimore and Cincinnati. And did you look that up to see where that game?
It's in Baltimore. I just looked it up.
Okay.
And I think Baltimore's going to win. Rapid fire answer. Baltimore's going to win.
Before I go on, Charles, I want to ask you, can you see these texts, people coming in?
Okay. I can.
We see Lauren's comment right there.
Yeah. I will just, we'll talk about that at the show. I think Baltimore will win.
Wow.
I'm not sure why you're not interacting with them. I'm thinking you're not seeing the text.
I am seeing them. I'm seeing the text at the bottom.
I'm sorry, you're not interacting with them.
Oh, anyway, I'm sorry.
We're talking about the league. On to the next. We had a great flow going. We don't need to stop the flow of the show over you not interacting with them. Let's go.
Well, we do appreciate the comments for real. So if I have done that, I apologize, guys. We do appreciate the comments, and there have been some good ones, real good ones. We're going to get into college football, but we're going to go pretty through college football. And we're going to start with the Penn State-Ohio State game, since I know how badly Earl loves the Big Ten. I'm going to take a deep breath because I thought the quarterback play in that game was horrendous. David, help me here. What did you think of the Michigan-Penn State game, A, and what do you think? Do you think they handled the Harbaugh situation relative to the game?
They did the best they could with the Harbaugh situation. What do you do? I mean, at this point, you're questioning whether they're stealing signs, whether they are doing unfair scouting. You know, cry me a freaking river. Penn State never beats Michigan. They never beat Ohio State. Boo hoo hoo, boo hoo hoo. James Franklin is one of the most overrated coaches in years. He has a stadium that seats 100 and some thousand people, 110,000 people or whatever. And they lose the big game. So I don't want to hear it. It had nothing, you know, if Michigan can run, which they ran the entire second half, if that's a way to beat Penn State, shame on Penn State for not stopping them. Shame on them. So I don't look. The penalty against Michigan is garbage, but it's still a penalty. It's still something that they violated, and they got to be careful. Jim Harbaugh ain't John Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh is always finding ways to try to cut a corner and be a little slick. Well, he got caught. Yeah. Even though it's a bogus penalty, it's something he should have been aware of. You got somebody dressed up like they're part of another team. How stupid can you be? So I'm of two minds of that. It's a garbage rule, but don't be stupid.
Right. Hey, Larry, what did you think of that game? And if you want to have any quick comments about the Harbaugh, the handling of that whole Harbaugh situation.
The game was kind of a throwback game where nobody threw the ball. I should have said a run back game. But Michigan certainly dominated the game, and it at no time, I watched that game, at no time did I think Penn State was going to win that game. It was total whitewash. Penn State is clearly a lot better. Michigan is clearly a lot better than Penn State. With respect to Harbaugh, regardless of what we think of the penalty, they have a rule, and it's been brought to the league's attention. Now, really, the penalty on him is really kind of soft. I mean, he gets to coach the team. He's not suspended. He's not losing any money. He's get to coach the team, and he has to accept responsibility. The school has to accept responsibility.
Well, just a clarification, Larry. He gets to coach the team, but doesn't get to be on the sideline.
I'm clear with that, but let me finish. Yeah. He gets to coach the team during the week, the team is prepared by him. The real question is he going to coach against Ohio State? I think it might be mitigated and he'll get to coach. But I don't think the league really wanted to do anything, but they had to do something. I mean, it was just brought there. And like David said, they're dressing up like Central Michigan to spy on Michigan State. Okay. You got to do something. He's got to be responsible. And they didn't deny that it happened. So, they really couldn't.
No, they couldn't.
So Earl, as exciting as that Michigan Penn State game was to you, because I know how you feel about that great conference, the Big Ten. Did you have any thoughts about that performance? And
I thought it was
what point did you turn the TV off?
It was a putrid, pathetic performance of two overrated Big Ten teams. And while we're talking about overrated, I don't think Michigan should be in the top four as far as I'm concerned. I think Washington should be in there before Ohio State or Michigan. Actually, I have two teams with one losses should be in there before Michigan and Ohio State. Game was horrible.
I just don't understand why they can't get a little more creative from an offensive standpoint. I'm not asking them to be, but just in 2023, I just don't see how that's attractive for an offensive recruit to want to come to play.
Let's be fair enough. Before we get all out of hand, Michigan has been throwing the football and playing a well-rounded series of games all season. They just found out that they could beat a lackluster Penn State team without passing. And there was a lot of pressure on that team because they lost their head coach on the sideline for the game. So there were a lot of things at play. You have a temporary head coach who's probably just wanting not to mess things up. So there's a lot of things in play. It'd be one thing if Michigan had been running exclusively all season long. They haven't. They have a pretty decent quarterback. Now, have they played anybody of note? No. But Penn State is technically a pretty good team. They just tend to lose to Ohio State and Michigan every year.
Right.
Penn State's not a good
And I
team.
think David raised a good point. They didn't need to pass. They were able to run the ball on them.
I don't care how they won. I didn't mean to interrupt you like that. I'm sorry. I don't care how they won. They're not that good.
Well, I got to disagree with you, Earl. I'm sorry. They are pretty good. They
I
are pretty good.
I'd be willing to bet, and I don't bet on sports. I believe Oregon and Washington are better than Ohio State.
They are more exciting maybe than Michigan or Ohio State this year, but they end up getting scored on a lot. Oregon and Washington have porous defenses just like USC. So you have to factor that in when you talk about who's good and who's not. And I don't think you're doing
No team has to worry about Penn State. So first of all, throw them out of the conversation.
Well, Penn State
can't
beats
they can't
all
score
the teams other than Michigan and Ohio State. They do tend to beat all those other teams. Do they beat them in an exciting way? Probably not. They're pretty boring, and James Franklin got to take responsibility for that. But Penn State is not a joke program. They're just a 9-4, 10-3 program, and they'll never be better than that.
Under that coach,
I think things will sort themselves out because I think only one of those Big Ten teams is going to make the tournament, and I think one of the Pac-10 teams that's doing well will probably take that spot. Whoever comes out of the Pac-10, so I think it'll sort itself out.
It'll be Washington.
We might get to see them actually play a Big Ten team in the tournament.
They have the best quarterback in the country, Washington. Yes.
Well, let me ask you that question. If again the season ended tonight, who, Earl, would you pick to be the Heisman Trophy winner?
I would pick the quarterback from Washington without a doubt.
Michael Penix Jr.
Yep.
Yeah, they're undefeated, and he's been the head of the snake there. So that's not a bad choice, Larry. If the season ended today, who would you pick as your Heisman Trophy winner?
Well, either him or Marvin Harrison.
Yeah, Marvin is good. And David, I think I know your answer, but again, who would you pick to be your Heisman Trophy winner?
Look, first of all, it's the quarterback award. It's just garbage. I'm not a Heisman Trophy fan. The best player in college football is Marvin Harrison Jr., and it's not even a debate. Michael Penix Jr., who's played outstanding, is in his 13th season in college football. I'm sorry. He's played well, but when you're 35 years old playing against kids, you're supposed to win the Heisman.
Don't clap at that. Don't clap at that, Charles.
So, and listen,
encourage him to say something else silly if you get someone laughing.
Kung Fu, thanks for your comments, man. We do appreciate your thoughts on things that we're talking about. So thanks again. And I think Marvin Jr. is a good choice.
Yeah, I had a little bit of respect for Kung Fu, but when he said it's going to be a Big Ten national championship, it all went out the door. I'm not messing with Kung Fu no more.
Well, listen. Let's talk about something else that happened in college football. So Mr. Jimbo Fisher got let go from Texas A&M. Now they won 51-17 on Saturday. They're 6-4 or something like that.
Can I say something on that? Can I be first to respond?
Okay.
I cannot wait to dive into Jimbo Fisher.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, he poked at Alabama and got his butt kicked. Talking about Nick Saban. Nick Saban kicked his butt. Look, but he's still Jimbo Fisher, as pathetic as he is. Still, he's the winner. You know why? Because he's getting $76 million.
Walk away money.
$76 million freaking dollars to be a mediocre coach. Okay. They got that money. They got that money in Texas A&M.
Does every house in Texas have an oil rig in the backyard? Is that what's going on in Texas?
They must.
I tell you. Hey, Larry, do you think by them letting him go this soon, like on Sunday after winning, and they have a winning record, do you think there's something like maybe they're trying to get Deion to come from Colorado to Texas A&M? Do you think that's a possibility? What's your thoughts on that?
I guess it could be, but I really think he's fired because 6-4 is not acceptable there for the type of money he's getting. But so they'd rather give him even more money to not be there. Right. Perverse logic. I don't know. Deion seems to bring a lot of buzz with him. And if the price is right, yeah, I'm sure he'll consider it.
Right. Well, that's a good question, Larry. That's a good question. I want to ask Go-Go. So Go-Go, seriously. The whole country's been talking about Deion in Colorado, and he's got the kids coming in for next season. And he said he's been keeping receipts. And we think the big folks, the defensive lines and the offensive lines, are coming from the portal or wherever they're going to come from. Do you think Deion would leave after 1 year?
Everybody has their price.
I know.
That's all I'll say.
Can I weigh in on that?
Sure.
It would be a horrific mistake from a PR standpoint for Deion Sanders to take that job. Sometimes you can overestimate and shoot too far. Just get Colorado into a big bowl. Get them into national prominence before you think about jumping after one season when now all of a sudden you have a losing record. No, it would be a terrible mistake. And then the mystique of Coach Prime would be gone. I think it would be a mistake. And the Wolves would be all over him. All the same people who are kissing Coach, call him Coach Prime. His name is Deion Sanders, Coach Sanders, but he's Coach Prime. That the moment he jumps to Texas A&M, which is a cesspool of a place to go to, and then struggles at Texas A&M, they will turn on Deion like vicious vultures. I'm sorry.
Well,
I have a comment on that.
Okay, let me just make a point, Larry. I'm going to throw it to you. The point I would make is A, that conference is dissolving, right? The Pac-12 or whatever. And B, Deion in the SEC would be attractive to the SEC. Go ahead, Larry. I just wanted to make those two quick points.
If I'm his agent, it depends on what motivates him. If he's motivated by money, I'm going to get a contract better than Jimbo Fisher had. So whether I win or not, if they get tired of me, I'm going to walk away. I wouldn't go there for less than what Jimbo Fisher got. And if the money's there, he's taking a chance. If that's what's motivating him, he's taking a chance there at Colorado. If that's his primary motivation. And money could be his primary motivation. I don't know. And there's nothing wrong with it if it is. But I'm going to get a better contract than Jimbo Fisher got, and I'll go. If I can get out of Colorado, has him under contract though, so
they can buy him out. I think it's a $10 to $15 million buyout.
Colorado will not let him go.
Well, it's not
a no-lose situation in Colorado. He's playing with house money by coaching Colorado. It's a top program. They draw about 70,000 fans per game. He's making big money, getting all kind of endorsements. It would be a tremendous mistake, horrendous mistake if he was to leave.
I don't even know what conference they're going to be in though next year, Dave.
Colorado is in the Big 12 next year.
If they pay him $100 million, I think he's got to take it. It ain't gonna
well, be I hope he doesn't. I want him to prove that he can convert Colorado into a viable program, which he's on the verge of doing. Why leave?
What his motivation is?
Well, I think his motivation is to prove that he can be a good head coach. I don't think Deion has plenty of sources of money coming in.
Hey, Dave,
$100 million.
I see him. I see him addressing that just like they addressed him about the coach making fun of him. I'm seeing him look at the report and say, "Look at me. Do I look like I care what someone thinks about me when I can make over $80 million?" And that's
right. That's what I look at.
I think his reputation is on the line if he was to go to Texas A&M. I think it would be a mistake.
one other comment about that. Dion at the press conference on Tuesday, they asked him about the Texas A&M situation and so forth, and him leaving, and he didn't shut it down. He could have said, "Wait a second."
Well, that's a negotiating ploy. College coaches do that every single year to get a better contract. Right now, Colorado is paying Dion about $5 million a year. It's big money. It's 10 times the money he was getting down in the Black College, Jackson State. So for him to get real money for what he's done for Colorado, the attention he's brought to Colorado. Yes, are they a winning program this year? They won more games than they've won in years. He should get a contract from Colorado about $10 million. He's playing the game. He's not going to leave Colorado. I can assure you of that. He's not leaving Colorado, but he probably will get a $10 million a year contract from Colorado.
If they offer him $100 million and pay his buyout,
it's not.
I can't imagine him not going.
He's not going to do it, Larry. I'll bet you anything. He's not going to do it. No.
Put the other part of it. Let Texas A&M offer him the money,
and then Colorado will match. He's not leaving Colorado. No.
Let's wrap up college football. Unless you guys have one more thing to say about anything else you saw the last week. And let's get into the National Basketball Association and those pretty floors that they have that I've seen the last few days. So let's start out by asking the question, what do we think? This is quick. What do we think of the tournament so far, the in-house tournament? And I'll start with you, David.
By the way,
I know, Indiana Pacers.
To my favorite sports team of all time, the Indiana Pacers. I've been following them since I was 12 years old. No, 11 years old, actually. Look, I think it's a pretty good idea. The NBA needed to draw some attention. Those floors, even though they're kind of garish and gaudy, they at least let you know this is a tournament game. Right. My Pacers, by the way, are 2-0 in the tournament. Right. It doesn't impact anything in terms of the season. The only extra game is the championship game in Las Vegas, whenever that would be. Right. I think it's a very clever idea at a time when the NBA is not talked about, when all we talk about is the NFL. Why not?
Right.
There's a no-lose proposition.
I think you made a point right before we came on the show that the last player on the bench of the team that wins this thing is going to pocket it along with the rest of the team, $500,000. So that's a little bit of an incentive.
That's big money to the 13th, 14th, 15th man on the bench.
Well, and the first person. Larry, what do you think of the tournament so far?
So far, it's kind of hard to grasp it because it's kind of tied in. And I think when they get to the next round, when they start having a knockout round, I think it'll draw even more attention. It's interesting. The players seem to be selling it. They're acting like they're interested in it. So Good idea, low risk, good idea by the NBA.
So the NBA, I want to talk about 4 teams real quick, but I want to get your thoughts too, Earl, on the tournament. The 4 teams I want to talk about, you guys can start thinking about. Philly, Dallas, Minnesota, and the Houston Rockets. I'll get back to that in a second. Earl, do you have any thoughts on the tournament?
Yeah, this won't take long. I think it's ridiculous. So it's ridiculous.
All right. Why? Let's talk about Philly.
Why is it ridiculous? What's the point of it? But to scam people out of their money. It's no point in the stupid in-season tournament.
It's just a way to market the NBA at a time when no one is really paying attention to it. The first couple of months, the last couple of months of every calendar year, the NBA isn't really talked about in a national way. We don't really talk about the NBA until the All-Star game, which is in February. And why not take advantage of that and do it? Why not?
That's fine and dandy, Dave. But Charles asked you what you thought. You said what you thought. I said nothing. He asked Larry what he thought. He said what he thought. I said nothing. So why can't I just say what I think?
You did, and I just disagree. That's all. I just disagree.
But you had already made your point. You already made your point that you thought it was a good tournament.
I thought we didn't argue sports.
So we got 4 teams I want to talk about.
We discussing what's happening. You made your point about what you thought. So it was obvious what you thought. So as soon as I said different from you, it's obvious that we would disagree.
So let's talk about those 4 teams. Let's start with Philly. Philly was 8-1, went into Indianapolis last night. Davis Pacers handled their business. Maxey had just come off a 50-point game. He is playing great this year. Barry, I'm going to start with you. Why is Philly so good this year? What's going on in Philadelphia?
Philadelphia, they seem to have changed they have a new coach, different offensive philosophy, where they actually move the ball around a lot. So you got people like Maxey playing a bigger role offensively, Tobias Harris playing a bigger role offensively, and Embiid is still getting his. So they look pretty good. They until they lost to last night, they had only lost one game, a 1-point loss to Milwaukee on opening night when Dame ended up with 39. They look good, and I think they're going to be a team to reckon with in the East. I think Boston might have a little more of a fight than they thought they did in that conference.
I tell you, they caught me by surprise. I knew how you've been following Philly, so I wanted to get your thoughts. Hey, David, did you see that game at all? I know you're in Indianapolis. Were you able to catch any of that game yesterday?
I caught a bit of that game. Look, first of all, the game was in Philly. The Pacers had played Philly a couple of days before that as a regular season game. Look, the Pacers. Look, I know we got 4 teams we want to mention, but the team on the come up are the Indiana Pacers. Period. And look, I'm tired of being flyover country. This is a good team. They have one of the great young players in Tyrese Halliburton, and the Pacers are 2-0. In this tournament, and matters.
Hey, David, all the teams we're talking about are going to be flyover country teams.
What's the record? Like
other than Philly.
What is the Pacers record right now? 64?
7-4.
7-4. Nice. Really good. What's up with the Philadelphia 76ers? Go. Did you think they would be like this the first 10 games of the season?
Well, I thought that they would, but I didn't think they would be as good as they are now, but I'm having doubts about them already. Didn't they lose last night?
They did.
They lost to the
Pacers. I'm not thinking too much of them now.
Well, they beat the Pacers, I guess, earlier in the week.
I thought with the last game they played, they had momentum. They should have beat. They should have beat the Pacers. No way the Pacers should have beat them. They lost.
The Pacers are pretty good.
Okay, let's move to the next team, Houston. Help me with the name, David. How do you say the coach of the Houston Rockets who came from the Celtics? How do you say his name properly?
Ime Udoka.
Okay, they're doing a fantastic job down in Houston. They've got 2 top draft choices over the last 2 years. The guy that was second and third. They've got they picked up Van Sleet from Toronto. I mean, they have impressed me so far as well. Do you have any thoughts on the Houston Rockets, David, at all?
They're a good team. They got a pretty good coach. As long as he leaves the secretaries and everybody alone, he'll be all right.
They may not have that rule there.
And it might not have been a secretary. Who knows who he was with? Larry, any thoughts on the Houston Rockets?
They're playing as pretty well. The coach is doing a good job, but I'm not sold on them yet. I think it's early. I think they'll regress to the mean.
Charles Barkley has a saying. He said this last year. I thought it was funny. He said, "This time of the year, the sorry teams don't know they're sorry yet. It'll all work itself out." That kind of thing.
Well,
right, that's true.
I heard him say that. I think he's stupid.
That was funny. Any thoughts on the Houston Rockets? Are you surprised in the first couple of weeks how well they've been playing?
I'll be honest with you. I don't give the Houston Rockets. They're not even on my radar. My thought.
Right on. All right. Let's move to the third team, the Dallas Mavericks. So we kind of the last 2 years kind of been making fun of Kyrie. Doncic kind of fell off a little bit last year, but the two of them back this year, they're playing really, really well. I don't know if they added any other additional pieces that I'm aware of, and yet they're 8-2. David, you have any thoughts of the Dallas Mavericks? Are you surprised at them?
They have one of the great young players in many, many years. Luka is great, great, great. Look, I'm not going to talk about Kyrie because everybody knows how I feel about Kyrie. Look, anytime you think the earth is flat, I lose respect for you. That said, they will go as far as Luka allows them to go. They're a pretty good team. They have a superstar, one of the top 3-4 players in the NBA. If you got one of the top 4 players in the NBA, you got a damn good chance every time you step on the court.
Larry, are you surprised that they're 8-2 with just Luka and Kyrie? I didn't think I thought they should have added more pieces in the offseason, and they really didn't.
Well,
and yet they're off to a good start.
They have a rookie. I think he went to Duke or something. Big boy that played when they played their first game. And he actually did pretty well against Wemby when they played each other. He's not going to get the shots because they got Kyrie and yeah, but he plays good defense and he rebounds. He gives them some size and some presence. And he's the type of guy, for lack of a better term, garbage man. You know, he collects stuff, puts it back in. And quiet as it's kept, he's made a difference for them. And he's not really, I think his name might be Lively or something like that. I think he went
to Derek Lively.
Yeah.
I think it's Derek Lively.
Yeah.
Good. Go. What was I right about Kung Fu? Hey, Go. What do you think of the Dallas Mavericks? And again, I know you follow the NBA. Are you too surprised, like me, that they're off to such a good start with just Kyrie and Doncic? And Kyrie has been behaving himself so far.
Well, I'm not surprised. I mean, you got two of the top scorers in the league. I mean, how much do you need? You just need a couple of role players. What's the problem? Right. They have a big man that Larry's talking about. I'm not surprised.
What position is Doncic? Is he a point guard or off guard?
He's a point guard.
Yes.
Yes.
He ain't Kyrie Irving.
Final question before we start to wrap the show up. Our team is the Minnesota Timberwolves. Another team that took me by surprise, the Minnesota Timberwolves. Let me tell you what I heard this week about Minnesota. They used the word Anthony Edwards in the same sentence as Michael Jeffrey Jordan, saying because he's a two-way player, he plays great defense, he's got the jump. And all. I mean, I know he was pretty good, but to put him in that sentence, I'll start with you, Larry. Were you surprised at how Minnesota is off to a good start? And what are your thoughts about that? In that sentence there, they're having Jordan's name in the same sentence as Anthony.
I haven't heard that sentence. Minnesota, I think, has some talent there. I still think they got to resolve their situation with those two big men because I'm not sure how well that's working. Anthony Edwards, I think, is one of the best players in the league, and we have a lot of good players in the league. But I saw them play against Boston, and they gave Boston their first loss. And in overtime, it seemed like he took on Drew Holiday, Tatum, and Brown on different occasions, and they couldn't stop him. I mean, anybody could get hot at one night, but when you mentioned a two-way player, he guarded all of them when he needed to, switched off on them, and took them to the hole. And every time I've seen him, really since last year, he's impressed me, and he's going to get better and better.
Earl, any thoughts of Minnesota and this guy Anthony Edwards? They're 8-2. They're 8-2. Minnesota is 8-2.
I think Anthony Edwards is great. He's a rising young star. He's one of the biggest stars in the league. I haven't seen the Jordan comparison yet. I don't know where that's coming from. Like, the guy's very, very good, but to say that he put his name along with Jordan, I think that's a stretch. Minnesota's playing pretty well. They have a pretty good team, but they can't do any major damage.
Well, listen, guys, we're up near the end of this thing. We're going to have to cover college basketball next week, and we will. There's a long season, so we're going to bypass that. What I want to do now is see if we can wrap up by doing.
But I did a lot of research for that. I did a lot of research for college basketball this weekend.
Well, save it for next week, go. Save it for next week.
No, that'd be too late then, man.
Let's do closing comments. David, do you have any closing comments?
I do. First of all, I want to take it back a little bit to Minnesota. My closing comments relate to that. The thug named Draymond Green, who I enjoy watching when he is not victimizing other players. He put a chokehold. He put a chokehold on Rudy Gobert of the Minnesota Timberwolves. You don't put a chokehold on anybody. That is something that can kill someone. And I don't care how angry you are, throw some fists or something, but you do not put a chokehold on somebody and then pull back as if you're about to kill him. I didn't like what I saw. It was a bad look. It was horrible. And every year there's something going on with Draymond Green. At some point, the NBA needs to step in and deal with this monstrous thug and get him in line or get him out of the league.
If you were the commissioner, David, what would be the penalty for you?
I would suspend him for at least half a season. You don't do that.
Larry,
not that particular action, no.
Larry, any closing comments?
Yeah, I was thinking about I heard the Olympics were going to have flag football. Why? Okay, so the U.S. can win more medals. Can you imagine Tyrese Hill playing against somebody from like Switzerland or something? Give me a freaking break. We don't need flag football. The only sport that's really only played in the U.S. and somewhat in Canada in the Olympics. Come on, Olympics. Come on. We don't need to do that. We can win enough medals.
Very interesting. Although the Olympics has that contest where the girls or the people anyway do the flag way. I don't know.
That's not the only thing that we don't need to.
Exactly. That's a good point. Go. Any closing comments?
No.
No closing comments. So I have something I want to say real quick. We talked about the quarterbacks from Penn State and Michigan. Well, there were other quarterbacks this weekend that performed. The Alabama had a quarterback, Jalen Milrose. He had 6 touchdowns. They beat the brakes off of Florida. And I mean, 6 touchdowns in one game, 3 passing, 3 running. The other quarterback is from LSU. His name is Jalen Daniels. He had over 600 yards of offense. He had 373 yards passing with 3 touchdowns. And he had 234 yards rushing. I think we should keep an eye on both Jaden and Jalen Milrose from LSU and from Alabama. And I'll tell you what, if Alabama can figure out a way to get into that Final Four, you got to watch them. That's it for us tonight, guys. It was another wonderful show. Thank you, gentlemen. You guys were fantastic. Now, outside social media, if you want to join us on the post-game show later, we're getting ready to sign off and mix it up there. So take care. We'll see you next week. Thanks again for joining us.
Peace.